Oopsie. Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of September 6, 2023. The City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington Open Public Meetings Act. Community members are welcome to join either in person, remote, via Zoom, or by calling in. For those who wish to participate in a future meeting on Zoom, you'll find the instructions to register for public comment on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Please note, we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please take the roll this evening?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yeah, here.
Councilmember Vogely.
She's running late. She'll be here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
Vice President Tui.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Excused?
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Here. Vice President Tui, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Yes, please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Councilmember Ryan, would you please read the land acknowledgements?
Yes, thank you. The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Shahobs people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with these lands and waters. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, their stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Next, we will take up the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes for the August 30th meeting?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Seconded.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Vice President Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Franklin.
Good evening, Council President and Council members. I have no comments this evening, just a reminder that it's back to school time, first day of school, and everyone should drive safely and watch out for the kiddos. So, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to public comment. Angie, do we have anyone signed up to make public comment this evening?
As of right now, we do not.
Thank you. We'll move on to council comments and liaison reports, starting with Councilmember Zarlingo.
Nothing from me tonight.
Thank you. And Councilmember Fossey.
I'll leave it to Councilmember Ryan to talk about our Human Services Committee meeting that we just had, which was amazing. So I guess my only comment then today is welcome to all the kiddos who it was their first day of school today. I know that was a big deal. My kids were very much in good spirits, so welcome back to school, everybody.
Thank you. Vice President Tui.
Just a comment that our committee meeting before this was really informative and wonderful, and I'm sure that Councilmember Ryan will speak to that. Than that, I have no comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
I guess I'll talk about the committee meeting. So before this, we had our Health and Human Services Committee meeting, and we had a really great presentation from a couple of representatives from Everett Gospel Mission to share more about the pallet shelter village that they have down at their space, which is called Palisades, as has been named by the residents there. The city of Everett has provided a number of pallet shelters to the site, and we heard from John Hull about the services that are provided, the lessons that they have learned over the last few years, and just the big successes and also the less noticeable successes that they've had at the site, and just what a great opportunity it is to help service people that are a high needs population, and just to help with getting these folks stabilized and the services that they need, and that they've had a good success rate of moving 25% of their folks to permanent housing, and some have gone through treatment into permanent housing, which is just really great to hear, and which, as far as I'm concerned, the whole point of the pallet shelter is to help get people to a place where they can accept services and then help them get on their feet. So there's a total of 40 units that are there now, including 5 bath, and then in addition to the 40 housing units, there's 5 bathrooms and 4 showers, so there's enough space for folks to just have their hygiene needs addressed as well. And that just wanted to really encourage folks that if you do have questions about how the site is being managed and some pictures as well, please visit the meeting right before this through the YouTube channel for the Health and Human Services Committee for a very in-depth overview. Yesterday, I joined the Parks Board of Commissioners to have an update on the work that the Parks Board's been doing and our Parks Department has been doing. Was really great to hear about all of the openings that are coming up soon for Hannahbrook Park, the Silver Lake Loop Trail, and then we got to have a sneak preview of the Edgewater Park design, which is at 60% right now. So it's great to see the good work that Parks is doing, and just also mention too that the many of the great playgrounds that we have been seeing, though the Parks Department does replace them on a particular cadence. Many of the playgrounds that are being replaced are way past their life expectancy. So it's just an example of the good work of stewardship that the city is doing to get the most use out of the facilities that we have, but also just a reminder too that if our parks and if our city could be fully funded, then we could replace them on a more frequent basis. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And yes, and so anyone who would like to see that meeting, they are available on the city website under the City Council Department and also on the city's YouTube channel. And I don't have any comments this evening. Councilmember Vogely, are you prepared to do your council comments and liaison report?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank
Sorry
you.
I'm late, everybody.
No worries.
I don't know if it was already mentioned, but it came to my attention that some of the accessibility in chambers is difficult for some, so I wanted to put it out there in the public, and then we can also like work on it internally. If you cannot stand or need to not stand or sit or have a wheelchair, the seat next to administration is available. If you also need wheeled access, chairs are allowed to be moved out of the way. There was one other thing, but I'll get back to you because I didn't write it down, and as you know, I came in late. So, thank you. Sometimes people need more than 3 minutes to talk, and 5 minutes is allowed, but you have to ask beforehand, and by beforehand, not on the speaker sheet, but the council president. You know what, I'm not sure exactly how long you might want to finish that statement for me, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, in advance of the meeting, and if someone walks in at the last minute and decided they would like 5 minutes, I will allow that as well. Thank you. Do we have an administrative update this evening?
I have one item, but before I get to that, we had a Zoom sign up, speaking of 5 minutes, and that person popped into the room right after you guys started, so if we can go back to public comment, if you
Absolutely.
don't mind, that'd be great.
Yes,
And
we
then
would be
I'll
glad to.
have mine
Thank
after
you.
that.
Thank you. So Jeremy, we're circling back to public comments. If you would state your full name, city of residence, and you will have 5 minutes to speak. Once you see the clock on the screen, that will help monitor your time. And go ahead. If you're talking, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jeremy. I live in Everett in District 3. I'd like to start my comments with an appreciation to the city staff who followed up with me since my last visit and statement. While I still have concerns and questions about the city's implementation of the bike plan with novel designs and months of no signage during construction, I'd like to focus my time tonight on a more pressing matter, the city's budget. This body is fully aware of the budget cliff the city is facing. We didn't get here overnight, with previous councils squandering more than a dozen years to sustainably address the structural budget issues. In the intervening years, what we've lost in services to belt tightening has largely been cutting at the margins and loss of quality of life services. I applaud the hard work of staff to prepare a balanced budget for 2024. However, it is clear that the mayor's forthcoming budget is more kicking the can down the road by adding staff positions using one-time funding, suspending left one contributions, avoiding capital contribution for deferred maintenance in favor of bonding, and drawing from the rainy day fund. Even with better than expended revenues helping us for the moment, the cliff in 2025 is still more than $11 million. And you all know this means cutting off a limb or a successful ballot measure to survive. The question is, which ballot measure option will you have the fortitude to put forward? This administration and council has been reluctant to make the choice of cutting or consolidating a major service that would actually provide financial sustainability, library, transit, or fire. Clinging to pride will only make the inevitable choice worse. You are trying to make the case that the 1% property tax cap is what is holding us back from continuing to be a full-service city, and it is. But regionalization and consolidation is the future. I'm here to tell you that if you refuse to pursue viable options in favor of a heavy levy lid lift that taxpayers don't understand where the money trickles to is a recipe for failure and further stress. I urge you to put the merger of the Everett Fire with South County RFA or Everett Transit with Community Transit as the first options. It's very likely that we'll need to do all the consolidations over time, but the likelihood of a failed lid lift measure is just too risky. Let's take the gift of additional time to prepare for the big decision and not squander yet another opportunity to fix the broken budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. And that concludes all our public comments.
Thank you. Now we will move on to our city attorney, Mr. Hall. What do you have for us this evening? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
You're
that's
still in
okay.
administrative update.
Yeah, no problem. You have an agenda item, number 6 on that's scheduled for adoption next week, and we had a question last week. I gave you a response in email, but I'd just like to circle back here during the meeting. This is a funding ordinance for the, related to the Port Gardner storage facility. So there's not a project labor agreement that's part of tonight, or to the action that's scheduled for adoption next week. But the PLA evaluation is an early action item in the design process, so it's sort of like the next step as we'll consider that. And our staff have noted that due to the complexity and the size and critical schedules for completion, it will very likely have PLAs related to various pieces of the projects that are part of that Port Gardner storage facility. And then, thank you to Council Vice President Tui and then Councilmember Schwab for their continued work on the Project Labor Agreement Task Force with the mayor and our staff. We're just a few more weeks away from bringing it forward to council, so just wanted to circle back on that item, and that was it.
Great, thank you. Now we will move to Mr. Hall.
No report from legal tonight, but we are requesting a 10-minute executive session pursuant to RCW 423110I with council action to follow.
Thank you. I will move to our a question?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the first, 3 sentences you said?
Sure. So tonight, item 6, that is scheduled for adoption next week. It's the funding ordinance for the storm and combined sewer improvements, and it's related to the Port Gardner storage facility. Councilmember Fossey, you had asked about whether a PLA would be part of this, and actually Director Sass spoke to it a little bit last week, but just for extra detail. It's not at this step because this ordinance will help us start design. The first step in the design process is to evaluate a PLA. The Port Gardner storage facility will have lots of projects, and they're all complex, and they'll be big, and they will have critical time schedules for completion, and those are all things that I can't say that it's 100% they'll all be PLAs, but our staff has said that it's really likely that, that many of those project steps, I guess, will involve PLAs. And that would be under either the draft ordinance that we're close to bringing forward or the existing resolution that is on the books today, under kind of the elements in either of those. Okay, good. Yeah, thanks for letting me restate it more artfully.
So I'm
Vice
confused.
President Tui.
That shows as an action item tonight.
Oh, it might, I think it's maybe, yeah, well, it's item 6, so if it's
Okay.
action tonight, or
Okay.
maybe I got that
just
part
wanted
of
to
it wrong,
clarify.
but.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, thank you.
you're right, it is on there for action tonight. Anyways, everything else was totally accurate except for that part.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the 3 consent items?
So moved?
Second.
Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Next, we have 2 proposed action items, which I'll be reading into the record their first readings. Item 4 is Council Bill 2308-41, first reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Phil Johnson Ballfield's Playground Renovation, Fund 354, Program 089, to accumulate all costs for the project. Third and final reading will be on September 20th. Item 5 is Council Bill 2308-42, also a first reading. Adopt an ordinance amending and closing the special construction fund entitled Police Impound Yard Additions and Alterations, Fund 342, Program 033, as established by ordinance number 3808-21. Third and final reading will also be on September 20th. Are there any questions on the 2 proposed action items? Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Mr. Director Leonard, question for you. For the item number 4, for the Phil Johnson ball fields, what is or for the Phil Johnson ball field playground renovation, what is the standard life cycle of our playground equipment? If you push the button, please.
Bob Leonard, Parks and Facilities Director. We have a standard of, we try to shoot for every 15 years for our replacement. We find that at around the 15-year mark, things start to be more worn out. There's more maintenance. Warranties start getting voided, running out. The public starts to get bored. There's a lot of factors that go in, and we use a 15-year number.
Great, and then how old is this?
I believe this
playground?
one is 22 years old.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on proposed action items? Thank you. We will move on to our action item. Item 6 is Council Bill 2308-40, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled PGSF WMVD Storm and Combined Sewer Improvements, Fund 336, Program 037. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We have 2 briefing items. These items come before the City Council serving as a council committee of the whole and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. Item 7 is Council Bill 2308-43, first reading. Adopt an ordinance approving the appropriations of the 2023 revised City of Everett budget and amending ordinance number 3961-23. The third and final reading for this item will be on September 20th. Good evening, Susie Haugen, Finance Director, and Heidi.
Good evening. Thank you very much. So tonight, we are presenting the Second Amendment for the 2023 budget. In total, we're proposing to amend the budget by $43.5 million, which includes $21 million for general government and $22.5 million for non-general government funds. Most of this amendment, $18 million of the general government request and $18 million of the non-general government request is related to establishing the new COVID recovery program in Special Projects Fund 155. We begin the general government amendments with the distribution of our vacancy budget offset of $5.5 million. The vacancy offset will be distributed from the non-departmental Fund 009 to the funds where the vacancies have occurred, including police, community planning and economic development, engineering and public services, parks and community services, municipal court, and municipal arts. There were 45 positions in the original 2023 budget offset. In June, council approved reallocating $18 million of unspent American Rescue Plan Act state and local fiscal recovery funds to the general fund for reimbursement of police and fire labor costs. This action created capacity in the general fund to create a new locally funded COVID relief program in Special Projects Fund 155. This amendment will create the budget authority to move the funding from the general fund to Fund 155 to establish the new program. The appropriation of funding for the COVID relief program in Special Projects Fund 155 is in the non-general government amendments coming up in a bit. The city previously received a pass-through grant from the Office of Public Defense to provide social services for years 2022 and 2023. Since then, the OPD awarded the city an additional $10,000 to provide training to public defense attorneys, investigators, and social workers at Everett Law Association, which is the city's main contractor for public defense services. This amendment will provide the necessary budget authority to pass on that additional grant funding. And as I mentioned last week, the tight labor market is impacting the city's ability to recruit and retain the skilled workforce that we need to deliver services. This amendment will fund compensation adjustments for key positions related to market analysis as well as changes in responsibilities. And the next amendment will appropriate the net cost of a recent reorganization in admin and HR. The purpose of the reorganization is to allocate needed resources to administration to focus on oversight and management of labor issues and to reallocate workload. We're requesting additional funding to increase staffing resources in a few critical areas, several of which are supported by grants, fundraising, or other outside funding sources. First, in response to growing community concerns regarding public safety, we're proposing to add staffing to the police department, including 9 police officers, a wellness coordinator, and a public disclosure specialist. You may recall that the Matrix study recommended adding 5 officers in addition to the 16 officers identified in the COPS grant. This amendment will help the city make progress towards the staffing level recommended in that report. Compensation for 7 of the 9 police officers will be mostly paid by the COPS grant. The COPS grant window for hiring is closing soon, and if we do not add the remaining positions this year, the city will lose that funding opportunity, a total of $2.6 million over the next 3 years. The other 2 officers in this request will provide backfill for the officers who have been selected to head up the new North Sound Basic Law Enforcement Academy. The cost of this backfill will be reimbursed in full by the academy during their assignment. With 6 guaranteed slots, adding these new resources will enable the department to get new recruits into the academy, trained and assigned to solo patrol much more quickly. And the added capacity will improve response to calls for service, including calls related to drug use and possession, trespass, theft, and other quality of life issues, all of which negatively impact our community's perception of public safety. The need for an embedded wellness coordinator in the police department was identified in the wake of the department's loss of Officer Rocha. This position will support and oversee our current wellness tools already in place, such as the Employee Wellness Visit Program, peer support, the Police Chaplaincy Program, and the Employee Assistance Program. Focusing on officer wellness will support partnerships and problem-solving, community relations, and employee retention. The public disclosure specialist will expand the department's capacity to respond to growth in public disclosure requests stemming from the new body-worn camera program. The police department's disclosure requests have increased from 4,944 in 2020 to 7,312 in 2022, representing a 47% increase in workload. In a survey of peer agencies, it was found that the city specialists process on average 2,437 requests annually, compared with 1,186 per specialist in the other agencies. We're also seeking funding approval to restore 2 positions, an assistant city attorney and the government affairs director, both of which were eliminated during the early onset of the pandemic. Cutting these positions permanently has proven to be unsustainable, as the remaining staff does not have the capacity to absorb the workload previously assigned to these positions. And the last funding request for staffing additions is for a part-time veterinarian. This position will be funded beginning in 2024 by the combination of donations produced by our very successful fundraising program at the shelter and veterinary service fees. The police labor agreement was finalized after the 2023 budget was adopted. Certain provisions in the agreement were not included in the 2023 budget, including bilingual pay, smart team pay, and changes to longevity and holiday pay. This amendment proposes to increase police labor expenditures to fund those provisions. The Family Planning Health Benefits Amendment will provide budget authority for a new health benefit for comprehensive and inclusive fertility and family forming solutions. Services are available to all employees who are eligible for health benefits and their covered dependents. City staff received a combined total of $88,750 in lodging tax grants from both the City of Everett and Snohomish County Lodging Tax Advisory Committee funds to support horticulture, the 4th of July, and Wintertide. This amendment will increase the expenditure authority in the Cultural Arts Fund 112 to cover those grants.
Beep, beep.
Yes.
Can you repeat that, the horticulture, 4th of July, Wintertide thing?
Oh, absolutely. So our cultural arts staff received grants from both the city's lodging tax and the Snohomish County's lodging tax to support those 3 programs, our horticulture event, the 4th of July event, and Wintertide. And so bringing in this revenue, we want to budget for the revenue and the expenditures. And that's what this amendment will cover. We also have a fuel infrastructure upgrade project. The city owns and maintains 10 fueling sites, including fire stations 1 through 6, the service center, Cash Park, Legion Golf, Walter Hall Golf, and the water filtration plant. These fueling sites are essential to delivery of public services. In 2019, a consultant was hired to conduct a site evaluation of all 10 fueling sites, and this amendment proposes to appropriate the general government's portion of the funding needed to complete the repairs and upgrades identified in that consultant's report.
Susie, can I ask, what was the impetus for the new family planning health benefit?
It was one of the recommendations that came out of an employee survey on comments on wellness and health benefits.
Mm-hmm. And we're self-insured, is that correct? So we'll absorb the full cost of that, is that?
This is a service that there is a per employee management fee associated with it, and then a per usage fee. It's a fairly low cost health benefit, and we will pay those fees. This is, it's not a service that is providing medical visits. I believe it's more advice and planning.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Questions, Councilmember Fosse, then Vogely, then Zarlingo.
So I'm confused about exactly what is the benefit.
The benefit is to assist employees and/or their covered dependents in fertility issues and family planning.
And so, but it doesn't actually cover any treatment.
No, it's more of a consultation service.
Is that the carrot?
Yes.
Okay. And I can't explain it any more than carrot.
I believe that's the name of the provider, yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Just had a question before we get too far from the discussion about the COPS grant and preserving that funding. If I understand that correctly, that the hiring would be the sort of first step before the basic law enforcement academy, that the clock on that can start as soon as we actually hire these officers before they go to the academy, or I suppose if they're lateral, then they don't do that. Have I got that correct?
I believe that's the case, but I'll let the chief respond to that.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Dan Templeman with the Police Department. I think the best way to answer that question is currently our wait time is between, 3 to 5 months to get recruits into the academy. And by having our staff members as the leadership for the new regional academy, we're guaranteed 3 slots per FTE that we have assigned there, so up to 6 slots. So that essentially prioritizes us, puts Everett at the front of the line for those regional academy spots. So once that regional academy starts up, which we think is either later this year or in January, we will have 6 guaranteed spots, where right now we have no guaranteed spots down at the Burien site.
Okay, so it can get those officers through the academy and productive on the streets and backfilling and all that as quicker.
I've been the chief for over 9 years, and I have not gone to one academy graduation where we've had 6 recruits in one class graduate. So it has the potential to be a game changer for us.
Okay, get us closer to the kinds of numbers that the Matrix study and the others have. Okay, got you, thank you.
Councilmember Vogely.
Didn't we just approve that like 2 or 3 weeks
What
ago?
you approved was the agreement with the state of Washington to assign, and the reimbursement agreement with the state of Washington.
Okay. And I'm not getting all of my questions out as we go, because I imagine we're going to go back and ask all of them, correct?
You can ask them at
Absolutely.
any time.
Okay, well, continue, but I have some questions that will go back, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So that actually does complete the general government portion of the amendment proposed for tonight briefing. And I'm going to turn it over to Heidi to go through the non-general government amendments.
Yes.
With that being done, can I just ask one question?
Sure.
I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about the public disclosure per staff ratio that you had previously said, and a little bit.
So we are adding, requesting funding for an additional public disclosure specialist, and these are the positions that fulfill public disclosure requests. When we started the body-worn camera program, that resulted in a sharp increase of requests for public disclosure that needed to be filled. And the existing staffing really needs assistance to be able to stay on top of those and meet our legal deadlines for fulfillment.
You gave a data point.
Oh, mm-hmm. So in 2020, our police department processed 4,944 public disclosure requests, and in 2022, that number had risen to 7,312. And that represented a 47% increase.
And then did you compare it to other departments?
Yes, so the department did a survey of other agencies and found that on average, the city's specialists process an average of 2,437 requests annually, compared to 1,186 per specialist in other agencies.
That seems like that is a lot of financial resources going to that. Interesting, thank you.
Is the increase in requests mostly related to the body-worn cameras, or is it just sort of a general increase in other areas as well?
You know, I think that we're seeing an overall increase in public disclosure requests. I know that I'm seeing that from a general city perspective, overall city perspective. The police does process and manage their own requests because they're quite specialized. And I would have to defer to Chief to say whether it was entirely body-worn or general increase plus body-worn camera requests.
Yeah, it is a combination of both, but obviously the police department's unique in the sense that we have the body-worn cameras. And what we found is that initially, we didn't have quite as many, the increase was not as substantial as we originally thought it would be, but it's now caught up to us. And, so whether it's collisions and insurance companies or just general discovery for criminal cases, this body-worn camera volumes definitely had an impact on our public disclosure team.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Councilmember Fosse.
Still on the public disclosures, and you've been processing the public disclosure requests since?
Are you asking how long the city in general
year.
has been? So,
When did you start doing the public disclosure requests?
gosh, it's been many years now.
In police, we've had a public disclosure person, and then it had to increase it, but at least for the last 31 years,
Yeah, it's been-
we've been processing
And
public disclosure requests.
Has that exponentially gone up in recent years?
Yes, we used to have, for citywide, we had one person that was generally processing our public disclosure requests in addition to the person at the police department. And now it has grown to where we have one person managing the oversight of it, but there are liaisons in every department that are working on these, fulfilling these requests. So it is quite labor intensive at times to fulfill these requests, but it is part of state law
Yeah.
that we do this.
And then the massive increase, when did you notice kind of that curve?
You know, I would say that that was within the last 10 years, from my perspective, really has
Yeah.
gone up.
It has steadily gone up for every year for the last 10 years, but for police specifically, the last few years, and especially with the body-worn cameras. So we have right now a staff of, one manager and 2 specialists that process those 7,000+ requests per year. Our manager is actually a working manager as well, so not only do they oversee the unit to make sure we're in compliance with state law, but they actually process complex public disclosure requests like our SMART investigations, which are extremely labor-intensive and technical. And so this request is to add a 3rd specialist that
Yeah.
does that daily work.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. I know Lake Stevens recently started to charge folks for, per minute for the footage that needed to be redacted. I was curious if that was a consideration that our city might take under consideration.
Yes, when we do that currently as well. I think ours is a per hour redaction fee, and it's not applied to everybody. So if you're, let's say, a defendant in a criminal case, we don't charge for that, but general requests or media requests, we do have a per hour of staff time worked, a charge that we incur, that the people will incur.
We also, on the general government or citywide public disclosure requests, we do charge for copies and uploading time. It doesn't amount to much, though.
And I will say, having been here for a long time, that in the old days, you had to go through your own email to find things. So I'm very appreciative that we have that scraping software now where they can find emails in your box for you to meet the requirements of the requests. Councilmember Bowe.
Before we go on to the next one, non-general government. I did ask quite a few questions, yesterday, got some answers today, so obviously we're both not, Susie, you did great at answering all of them. So, some of them were, like, what are the occupation codes and whatnot, and, seeing that, like, $1 million of the staffing additions are funded with grants or other external sources, which leaves over $1 million from the general government. I don't think I saw anywhere, and maybe I just didn't read it, what those external grants are, or like which positions are being funded by that. So you don't have to tell me right now unless you told me already and just say, look there, or next, can you get that information, please?
I absolutely can.
And then considering, and let's see, I did ask for all of the different, occupation codes, right, and, occupations. So, for instance, the executive director to senior executive director, I had asked, what is that? And it's got an occupation code of 6,000, and I haven't been able to find that occupation code, and it's reminding me of the engagement director of last year.
Yes, that was a position that was, the class spec was created this year, and it will be in the annual salary ordinance that you will be looking at in December.
Okay. I think there's a couple of those in here, possibly the Public Works Director. I couldn't even find the Public Works Director in the occupation salary ordinance, which I was like, I know he exists.
It's definitely in there. And that's not a new occupation code. It's not a new class spec. It was just a market adjustment for that position.
I'm wondering if we need to put a hiring freeze or something on, because they're, I don't want to have the same types of conversations that we did last year, again this year, about who's getting hired and who's going to where. And I'm wondering also if our deputy mayor is still working for us, and if we need a new executive director, no, a new senior executive director. And that's, it's all kind of fumbling in my brain how we're going to be paying all of these people. And I know that we've had the government affairs director on the books for quite some time, but you just mentioned that that's coming up as a new position, but it isn't.
It's a restoration.
Right, and I can't remember what the other restoration was because I didn't write it down.
Oh, it's assistant city attorney.
Yes, okay. So I knew that we hadn't closed that title, and so it was available for reopening, but
Well, the council approves the labor budget, and then the allocation of those positions is really at the discretion of administration, so.
right, but like $2 million worth?
Well,
Or even $1 million, sorry, because there's other grants.
Well, if it's within the budget, I mean, we have the discretion to approve the budget or not.
This is an amendment, though, and so that's not really in the budget. It's an addition or an amendment to the budget that we
Yes.
did. So therein lies my problem. I don't think we have the money to pay for all of these people. And I'm going to be going through all of the item by item folks. I want people to be paid. I want us to have a good working government. But I've also been finding that there are, like, I think it's coming up in the non-general government piece, the stadium project management contract, you know, there was 2 of those in 2022 for just under $50,000. And I know that people and project service agreements don't have to go through council if they're under $50,000. These were like 45.5, 2 of them, and we didn't even know we were helping to build or acquire possible places for the stadium. That was a surprise a few months ago. I think Paula, Councilmember Ryan, might have said something about that. So there's many, many contracts that I've been able to find on our website. Some of them I have not been able to find on our website, and I'm one of the people that put in a public records request. So sorry about that. I'm bringing all of this up because there's a lot of money that we don't necessarily know that we're spending, and I don't like that. And I know that we have a city to run, and we have a very good executive to run that city, this city, but I have some issues.
I will say that there was a time, Susie will remember, that the city administration provided a monthly list of all the professional services agreements that were signed and executed, and maybe that would be some, I don't remember seeing that for a while, but maybe that would
Well,
be
actually, we
something.
still do that. We've never stopped. It's in the monthly financial report.
Thank
It's
you.
like the last section in that report every month.
That goes to show you how
So
often
the-
and deeply I read that. Thank you. I'm sorry, Susie.
And I guess then also going with the lodging tax grant memo communication, oh, it's for communications. Looks like Tyler Chisholm, or the program manager, got 4 individual $25,000 chunks, all for economic development and tourism for the 4th of July, horticulture, wintertide, and Jetty Island Days. I didn't hear the Jetty Island Days part of that. And it's cool because he's getting the Datify paid for by the Snohomish County, and probably the toilets for horticulture. I think that's what that one was. But, so it's nice to see that we are being reimbursed for certain things. I just wonder how that works when a person gets, where is that in the budget for, like, is it their economic development gets this much money to spend on this, and so that's where the LTAC money is going, is for this one thing.
So if you're talking about the city's LTAC program, then that is all in Fund 138. And the council approves the grant recommendations from the LTAC committee every year. And as money is spent, and specifically, for example, the tourism set aside that it happens every year, it's like $150,000. We have the $150,000 set aside for tourism, and then $100,000 a year that goes to the PFD for debt support. That's part of a long-term agreement with the PFD. But the tourism money is spent directly out of Fund 138. So for all of the advertising and promotional work that our tourism folks do, it's the costs are spent directly out of Fund 138.
As are the LTAC recipients of grants.
Correct.
Okay.
And that $100,000 for the PFD comes directly out of Fund 138, and a check is cut to the PFD. As far as Snohomish County's money is concerned, the cultural arts staff would submit reimbursement requests to the county for commitments.
Yeah, I see that we've gotten those already in, so that's cool. And then one other thing I just thought was really interesting, because we were talking about PLAs, and council and staff is working on it, and so's Intelligent Partnerships and Nancy Locke, and they both got PSAs, there's so many PSAs that mean different things for 23.5 each, so,
Yeah, the committee did work with a consultant, and that's the name of the consultant.
yeah, 2 of them. Okay,
Mentioned that a couple times, I think.
awesome. That's all I have right now.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fosse.
2 follow-ups to that. Do we have a site for the stadium? Did I miss that?
I think the last update that at least a council committee received, so it was Parks and Quality of Life on April 19th. I didn't just remember that, I did look that up the other day. And there's a long environmental impact process assessment that has to happen, so sites will be evaluated as part of that, but, and that's part of what the management contract will help us do, is go through that assessment process, so.
And that's the $50,000 one that's listed on here?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, it's up to $50,000, so we don't know if that's the threshold of what that would approve to spend. And so that work is happening to assess the current site as well as 2 other sites that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you say there was other? You had seen other ones dedicated to that in the past?
That was for different work, so.
Okay. It wasn't for assessment stuff? Okay. It
Yeah,
wasn't-
there was an economic feasibility study that was conducted by,
what I'm
to
thinking
see what the viability of a stadium and what the economic benefit to the city would be of a variety of locations, but not a specific study of the environmental, whatever, whatever she said much more eloquently.
Okay. I have one other question, but you can go ahead if you have. Yeah, go ahead.
Probably makes sense to answer,
Sorry.
because there was, if I remember right, a city-county cooperative study. Is this one of those?
No, the economic development study was a dual.
Okay, that was the one that I think, okay, thank you.
It's been a while, so I'd have to look.
Yeah, same with me.
I have them both here if you want to see them.
And the other question was, how would a hiring freeze be applied? And at what point do people usually do that at council levels without impacting like our emergency services, like police and fire, et cetera? Like, how does that actually work?
I would defer to our city attorney.
I'd rather you didn't. But no, that obviously is an incredibly complex question. And I think we would need to get legal and finance and administration and others together in order to even begin to give you an answer on that question.
And would that have to happen before action on this for it to actually have impact on anything, or it wouldn't matter if it happened today or if it happened before budget, our next meeting, when we approve things later this year, or?
I mean, because it's a complex question, I would encourage council to, assess if there are more than a few of you that are interested in that, and then really think about,
That's difficult
the
to do
timing
because
of
we have
the-
quorum issues, so really on the dais.
you're all
is-
here today, right? So
Yeah.
if there were other folks that wanted to jump in and say, hey, staff, that'd be great to really look seriously at that. And then, just like you said, sort of those impacts to, whichever are the key departments that you would want to ensure remain staffed, whether that's just police and fire or other departments that also have staffing challenges, and when that, effective date might be. It certainly wouldn't be quick, because I feel like the legal analysis part would be a quick part of it too. And then in my old life, I would say it just never really works, just because there's things that are the responsibility of the mayor, and then there are things that are responsibility of council. And at the end of the day, this is one of those really hard line ones. So it's really challenging, but of course, if there's interest, we can assess it.
And I'll just add, the majority of staff that we hire are essential, public works, police, fire. We have the government affairs director, which I would argue is very essential. You are a very active, engaged council, which I very much appreciate. And Jennifer is very busy working with all of you, which is why that position is here. But there's very few other positions outside of essential, like kind of critical infrastructure for the city. So a hiring freeze wouldn't really impact numbers if you said essential employees get to continue to be hired?
Well, I'm sure there's avenues where if you have a hiring freeze, it just puts a delay from things happening when you're having kind of a budget crisis situation and there's still pathways forward. I don't think that is like you're not hiring anybody, but having more information seems like that would be valuable since I'm not familiar with what that looks like.
I'm not either. I know the county has done it previously,
So,
county council.
not saying we have to make a motion or anything, but if somebody could send us more information without us having to ask for a motion, that would be really nice, just so we have a little bit more information background, if staff is willing to do that.
I think the mayor is nodding her head yes.
Does that suffice?
That totally suffices, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I'm also curious if we have a list of outside legal counsel that we contract with, like an entire list of companies.
Yeah, of course we do.
Can I have that, please? Yes or no?
Oh, I think I nodded.
Yes.
You've already submitted a public records request for
For-
several of them.
Yes, for several of them,
And-
but I don't know
and
who to
will-
ask for next.
Yes.
So
we
I want
can-
them all, please.
We create that list for the state auditor every year, and it's something we keep close tabs on, and we can easily get that to you.
Thank you. And is there a reason it's not online in the contracts area of data?
I don't think anybody's ever requested it to be online.
Okay, thank you. Requested.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to
me too.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's like in your peripheral here. Thank you. Since we're still on general government, I have some questions about vacancies, kind of following along here. So I saw from last year's budget, there were 252 approved positions with the police department. And then there's a number of positions being added with this amendment. And then the COPS grant also adds 7. So what's the total number that we are at right now for the total number of employees for police? If the amendment's approved and all that fun stuff.
256 plus 9. So, 260. Looks like it'll be 263, including the civilian positions.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
authorized, correct, but not all
Authorized.
filled.
Correct. And then, so then the email that we received earlier today listed 26 vacancies with the police department. So then with these additional 11 positions, will that basically bump it up to 37 vacancies until filled?
Correct.
Correct.
Not quite correct, because we are already in the process of hiring a wellness coordinator, right? Is that
Right.
correct? I'm not, just,
Yeah, that's correct. But we've got updated numbers. We're at 22 vacant police officer positions right now. So adding 9 more commission would bring that to 31 commissioned vacant positions.
Thank you. So I know that Officer Roble's been doing a wonderful job this last year to fill a lot of vacancies, and our vacancy rate has dropped so much just through the reputation of the Everett Police Department. And but through natural attrition, it seems like we've been balancing it around 20 vacancies or so. And I, totally understand that with the additions, we'll have some more slots opening up at the academy. However, I'm curious if there's been a consideration to release any of these vacancies so that other departments can pick up those FTEs to help with staffing shortages and just allowing for other departments to staff up a little bit more instead of having just this, seems like a pretty general baseline of about 20 vacant positions with EPD.
So when we accepted the COPS grant, we committed to a certain level of uniformed officer staffing, and we have to maintain that level for 3 years from when we have hired the cops, the police officers through the grant. So right now, we are committed to a certain staffing level. If we were to change that commitment, we would most likely have to return a lot of the funding, or all of the funding that we have received over the last couple of years for the positions we've implemented.
But we do have slow roll, so we budget for vacancies, and that money that, because we know, as much as we want to fill all the positions at the city, it just takes time, and we're a government, and we're slow, and we know we always have X number of vacancies, and a vast majority of them are in police. And so we budget for those vacant positions, and then that money that is, even though we have the officers, so 250 people in the budget, we know that only 230 people are going to be working at any given time, and so those 20, we have the ability to hire them, but that money we know isn't going to be spent, and so that's used across the general government for all the other work, whether it's parks or fire or planning or whatever. So that's part of our budget process, is budgeting for vacancies. And unfortunately, the vast majority of those are in police.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. So it's like the expenses are there, but then there's this offsetting, almost like a revenue that sort of takes them away. So we're not really withholding all of it's very complicated, isn't it? We're not really withholding all that money from other departments.
Yeah,
So it helps us balance.
thank you. Yeah, I'm familiar with the tactic there. What's the threshold level that we've committed to?
Well, so far we have filled 9 of the cops positions, 9 of the 16. This amendment would fill the rest of them. So it would be at our current staffing level, which you had that written down. That's including the ads, so 252.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, the head spins a little bit in terms of reconciling these different estimates and the numbers, and my sense of it is that administration on an ongoing basis is managing these priorities and these balances, and that if we as a council want to have, develop a sense of a shift we'd like or an adjustment to priorities, I think we might be best served and serve administration and the community if we come up with a different weighting on some of those things. If we say, well, we're going to, adjust in terms of more or less police or more or less of something else like public records or more human services. But that's why I guess I'm not sure that we're having a real productive discussion on those individual counts and individual staffings. I guess I see a better path if we feel like we're not seeing our priorities adjusted the way we'd like, to come up with a council consensus on that. I think that might be more actionable, because otherwise, as far as I can tell, administration is actively managing these things and prioritizing, and then to the degree we can, because we're so far behind, are pedal to the metal in terms of police staffing as we can. And that's probably where we'll be, because it's, for some time, because it's so hard to get closer to where we want in police staffing.
Councilmember Vogely.
Do you have, Councilmember Zarlingo, an idea of when we could have that conversation? Like, it seems now would be good, or, at a future full council meeting where we're all here.
I've had some informal individual discussions trying to make sure I'm not getting into quorum issues. And also, of course, I've talked with the mayor in our regular meetings about priorities. And I have not developed a disagreement on those priorities so far. I've talked, of course, with the chief about public safety, because honestly, a great deal of what I'm hearing from community members are issues around public safety. There's some of that.
Sorry, I just heard it was perceived.
Yeah, of course, it is all perception, but I find no reason not to credit those things, as the public commenter we had last week who couldn't feel like she could safely walk her dog or walk the sidewalk. So I don't really doubt that way. But I've not had issues that come to the point where I would suggest a different staffing level. I think there are things that we might do in terms of ordinances, enforcement, the prosecutor's office, sentencing, things like that, that would, align consequences better with actions, because I think that's something I hear from all ends of the spectrum. So I have not had that kind of discussion. I have not had that kind of reason to raise that issue other than on some individual conversations. So if you have something that way, yeah, and I'm not sure what the right mechanism is. It'd be nice to be able to consider it without doing it
We
in our
can't
limited time
consider
here.
it without us all being here, taking time. We can't. It's not acceptable because of quorum.
And I wonder, oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry. I wonder if, as we're approaching getting our budget books where we will see what the, the embedded priorities will be in that budget, that maybe that would be a great opportunity for us to see, okay, what's in here? How are resources being allocated, and have that conversation through the budget process when we can.
We're in the budget
exact.
process, right? I
So,
mean,
well,
that's what we're doing.
This is an amendment for the current year budget.
Yeah. Still the process.
Yeah.
Okay. And we know that jailing people is part of the budget and part of what public safety, a lot of people think is the right thing to do. But we could also take law enforcement officers that we don't have and give those spaces to maybe a, public works or a new alternative response team that isn't co-ed. There's all these things that need to be discussed while we're all still sitting here. Maybe not today, but I'm bringing them up today because as I continue to bring them up year after year, it's always, let's wait a little bit and talk about it when we can. So I'm going to make a point of talking about it every time I am here. And I hope that we can come to something, at least public knowledge, because people need to know what money is being spent where and why, and who's getting it. I know we aren't. A lot of the consultants that we hire that we don't know about make more than I do in a year at this job. So people are getting paid. It just depends on who those people are and what they're doing. So that is all at this time.
President Stonecipher actually, in a meeting I had with her this week, requested that we do a brief update on alternative response. So I think you'll be pleased to hear that in the coming weeks. We put in an earmark request to Senator Murray's office, and I believe this has been in a council digest from I don't know when. You're much better at remembering those dates, Jennifer, but we put in a earmark request to Senator Murray for $2.4 million for alternative response. We have been given the thumbs up that she's moving that forward. That money doesn't come to us until next year. So that will be exciting, and we will have the resources to really fully develop that. But we have, thanks to your approval of ARPA expenditures, greatly added to our social worker team. That is, it's not an alternative response, but it's like some of it's co-response and some of it's follow-up care. But I think that briefing will be really informative for you, Councilmember Vogely.
Thanks.
Councilmember Zerling, go.
I guess to close on a possible process on that, I think the dais here isn't necessarily the place to get the first introduction to a complex change or a set of trade-offs. And so with a consultation of the city attorney, I think if it's permissible for proposals like that, they can be sent to the council distribution list in advance, and in some advance, a chance to look over it, and then bring that up as a specific item in a meeting. That if you think that's a legal way to do things in terms of not.
We are the policy people. We could probably do that.
Council President, not to drag this out, but I just wanted to offer that I'd be happy to work with you as we think about the process for the 2024 budget. So you guys, as Susie could remind you of all this, but you have your budget hearings in November, and you'll hear the mayor's message on September 20th. But we have October, and we can talk about different ways that you might want to have that kind of vision and priorities discussion in advance of your budget hearings, meeting the Open Public Meetings Act and, probably up at the dais, but a way to kind of set those expectations. You did your retreat at the beginning of this year that helps set, some of your priorities for this year, but it's always great to have that to lead into your budget adoption. So, and there's lots of different ways to do that. So we can work on that and continue that
You will all
conversation.
have fun doing that while I am not here. Which is another very good point. One more thing. Go ahead.
Councilmember Ryan, did you get your request for adding something to the budget discussed or looked at or mentioned since you put it in how many months ago?
I did, yes. I have had a chance to discuss it with the mayor since then.
Fantastic, good to hear.
Any other questions on general government? I think that is your moment to pivot.
All right. So we start non-general government proposed amendments with a request for $50,000 to fund a professional services contract to assist with the management of the stadium project. The amendment will appropriate funding from the CIP4. Right. Next, we have a request to reallocate $18 million from the general fund to the new COVID recovery program within the Special Projects Fund 155. This action will increase expenditure authority for projects already authorized by council, and it will also transfer unallocated COVID recovery funds to Fund 155. We are also requesting to increase the CIP1 expenditure budget by $1.7 million for the following projects. First is the EMB tenant improvements, the design phase, and that's for $1,469,720. Everett Performing Arts Center Building Envelope Improvement Project for $93,125, and the main library Building Envelope Improvement Project for $150,000. And all projects have been approved by council through plans and systems ordinances. We're also requesting to increase the CIP3 expenditure budget by $958,000 for the following projects. Wiggum's Hollow Playground Replacement Project for $718,000 and Parks Restroom Renovation Project for $240,000, all of which have plans and system ordinance approved as well. The next amendment proposes to increase the Reserve for Parks Fund 148 expenditure budget by $26,000 for the Rotary Park renovation project, which was approved in closing ordinance 3945-23. We're also requesting to increase Motor Vehicle Fund 501's expenditure authority by $600,000 for fuel infrastructure upgrades and refurbishment that Susie had discussed in the general government amendments. And this is the overall impact for non-gen. The $600,000 represents the amount for the estimated amount for this project. There's also a request for $163,780 to hire 2 transportation security officers at Everett Transit Station. This is to address ongoing security coverage as well as overtime issues. We have 2 items from the Criminal Justice Fund 156. The first item is to appropriate $379,915 in grant awards that were obtained from the Washington State Administrative Office of the Courts, and this is to support the city's therapeutic court program. Grant funds are used to identify individuals that have substance use disorders or any other behavioral health needs, and really this program will assist those individuals with getting community-based therapeutic interventions. The second item is to reappropriate $206,104 in 2022 unspent fund balance to continue the BOLAREP program. This was authorized in budget amendment number 1. So we're really just reappropriating the ending fund balance of 2022 and appropriating it to 2023. Our last 3 items for non-general government come from the Special Projects Fund 155. This includes $240,560 in grant funds received from HUD. And these grant funds are limited to the purchase of pallets for placement at Faith Lutheran Church for the Faith Family Village Pallet Housing Project. Although the grant funds run until August 31st, 2030, we do anticipate expending these funds by the end of 2023. We're also proposing to reappropriate $74,771 in unspent grant funds from Snohomish County for the pallet shelter program, which is managed by the Everett Gospel Mission. And lastly, reappropriating $221,189 in unspent grant funds, also from Snohomish County, but for behavioral health case management.
Thank you. And all those grants allow for those reappropriations? The
That's
funds can be
correct,
carried
yes.
over. Great, thank you.
Does conclude our briefing on the budget amendment.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Vogely?
Can you tell me why the established new COVID recovery program and the established COVID recovery fund are the same amount of money? One's in non-general, one's in general.
Sure. Yes. In the general government, the expenditures is the transfers out to Fund 155. And in the non-general government, it's representing the expenditure authority for those council-approved items. Anything that has been unallocated or not approved by council is housed in the fund balance for that subfund.
Thank you. And whether or not I agree with this particular thing, would now be a time that if, like, say, we didn't, as a body, want the stadium project management contract or adding 2 transportation security officers, are those things already paid for? We're just saying yes after the fact? Or if we don't want transit security, just as a thing, can we say, no, I think that should not be in this amendment?
So the majority of council would have to determine that they did not want to fund those items. I believe we do have an unusually good pool to choose from for the transit security officers. I would recommend that that one would certainly go forward. And we do need budget authority to fund the project management to continue to investigate whether or not the stadium is feasible.
But I guess the question is, have they already been paid for?
She's asking about the process, not the specific
Yeah,
line
so
items.
some of those things have been paid for already, not in full, but because as the executive of the city, I have to run the city and make those decisions throughout the course of, the weeks and months of
Right.
work. And it's not possible to bring budget amendments forward every week to council to say, oh, we decided to do this and decided to do this. So I operate within kind of the overall budget, going, okay, we can afford to do this. I'm going to spend more money on this thing than I had planned, so we'll just put that in a budget amendment. And so for example, the contract with the stadium consultant, we've spent some of that dollars because that person or that company has already been contracted with, but we certainly haven't spent all of it. I have no idea. They've been working for us for 3 weeks. I don't know.
About that.
Yeah, so,
Is
yeah.
this the one, are we amending the April 20th, 2022?
April 20th, 2022 budget.
No, the $50,000 stadium project management
No,
contract.
this is a brand-new company that we are
Oh, this is
contracting
gonna
with.
be
This
the
is different.
third one.
Yes.
Okay.
This is an expensive endeavor, for us to
Yeah.
keep minor league in the city of Everett. And regardless of whether we build a new stadium or renovate the old stadium, there's no way for us to do that inexpensively.
Oh, I know, it's gonna be
yeah.
fantastically expensive.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't think
so-
that the city was doing that. I thought we were just saying, yeah, Aquasox,
So,
cool, do it in our city.
so what we're trying to do is assess whether we can do it, and that's what this money is going towards for these different consultants to do that preliminary work that will help you all make those decisions for us.
Cool, okay, so this hasn't been spent yet. Okay, that, I guess, answers my question. Just wondering if these have been paid for yet or not. So the answer is no. Noted.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you all. We will, thank you, Susie and Heidi.
Thank you.
We will see you back here on the 20th. Well, we'll probably see you before then, but we will for sure see you on for the third and final reading of this item on the 20th. We'll move to our next briefing. Item 8, adopt the resolution concerning 2024 human needs priorities. And I see Kimbra's been waiting very patiently for us. Kimbra Landry, our Community Development Manager, is here to brief us. There go your glasses. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. So I believe I was told if I just keep going right. Wonderful. Okay. Hi, Mayor. Hi, Council. So yes, Kimber Landry, Community Development Manager, and I am here tonight to present to Council a briefing of our 2024 human needs priorities. So just some general background. Every year, City allocates $4 per capita for grants to nonprofit organizations providing services to Everett residents. This was first established in 1989 and is allocated through the city's general fund pool. For 2024, it looks like approximately $450,000 will be made available, which is standard. However, that is with a potential increase that's based on council approval for future budget discussions. This is consistent with efforts that we also conducted last year for 2023 Human Needs Fund Pool and is greatly appreciated as we consistently receive more requests than we are able to fund. Community priorities are established annually through a public process and a public hearing held by the Citizen Advisory Committee. And a 30-day public comment period is conducted after the CAC makes a recommendation to allow for any additional needs to be identified before this is brought to council. This year, priorities continue to uphold needs identified through the federal consolidated plan goals, as well as mayoral directives, and no additional needs were identified through public comment. And then recommendations of annual priorities are brought forth for City Council to review and then have proposed action.
And I will only note, Kimbra, that when we started this program, it was $1 per capita. So it has gone up substantially since then. And it's amazing to think that that was what we thought the need would be. Now we could do like 100,000 per person and probably not meet the needs.
Yeah, and also the $1989, very different from the $2023, yes. So what is before you are the 2024 priorities that have been identified. We are recommending for housing, homelessness, behavioral health, violence prevention and reduction, and elements to support prosperous city. All human needs activities, again, must support vulnerable city residents with basic services. And also, as just a quick reminder, we also allocate federal and state funding in line with these priorities as best as possible, which I mentioned with the federal consolidated plan earlier, and that is also focused to serve solely low and moderate income persons. Real quick. 2024 Human Needs Priority Resolution. So this is what's in front of you. So staff is requesting from City Council through adoption of resolution the priority needs. The actual action for this will occur next week. Following adoption, the application period will open for agencies that are interested in not only human needs, but our federal and state funds as well. All applications, again, are only being accepted now through the online grant management software program AmpliFund. Gotta make sure I can put that in for anybody listening as much as possible. And then, of course, the Citizen Advisory Committee will review the applications, make funding recommendations, and all of those funding recommendations will come forward to council for briefing and action as well. Okay, so the important stuff and upcoming dates. So again, next week, we will, it says briefing. That's not briefing, that's action by City Council on this, on the priority resolution. And then our actual application period for all funding sources, human needs, federal, which includes CDBG and home, and state AHTF 2060 funds will all open on September 26th. And then tentative dates, only because, you know, a public committee have to consider any kind of vacations that happen during this time, but we're looking at November 14th for our federal and state funding recommendations and reviews, and then December 12th for human needs. Again, the Citizen Advisory Committee will hold a public hearing on those funding recommendations, and then that will go out for public comment. And then in January, following the public comment periods for both, City Council will be briefed and asked for proposed action on the funding recommendations. I believe that's it. Any questions?
Kimber, I have a question about what would be envisioned by the priority of prosperous city. That's new on this list, I believe.
Correct, it is. So when we look into the Prosperous City Mayoral Directive, it really has intentions for provision of amenities to residents. And so looking at elements of that, how community partners that are focusing again on human services for vulnerable residents to elevate that. We're really asking to see if there's anybody in the community that's focused on cultural arts for previously underserved populations. For connections between businesses and workforce groups is another element that's in there. And then also inclusionary playgrounds, things of that nature. This is actually more consistent with what we did for funding like pre-COVID. In 2019 and prior years, we actually used to fund like Everett Music Initiative or Snohomish County Music Initiative and a couple other projects that were focused on cultural arts. So this actually also expands the ability for us to have more agencies apply.
I would have to say there's probably not anyone greater on this council that loves the arts, but I wonder about the advisability of that when we have so many basic needs that I think have a higher priority than arts, and we have other funding sources for the arts in our community, so I'm just curious about that. Was there any discussion amongst the committee about that as a priority relative to housing, homelessness, violence prevention, and behavioral health, which I would say elevate above cultural arts funding?
There was not discussion between the CAC members on it. They continue to recognize, just like we all do, that housing, homelessness, behavioral health, and violence prevention are consistent priorities for us to look at and continue to elevate. Prosperous City and the elements to support the cultural arts didn't come up for discussion in the meeting.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we're not supporting, like, small businesses in this, because we have already done a bunch of funding from the ARPA funds for that.
Yeah, good point for consideration. So real quick on that, the EMC, the Human Needs Funds, actually lie under, if I was really good, I could cite off, it's like Chapter 2. And in that, we actually, only nonprofits can apply for these funds.
Okay.
So
Good.
good
Thank
point
you.
for clarification.
Any other questions? Councilmember Ryan and then Vice President Dewey.
Great, thank you, Kimbra. Can you share a little bit more about the outreach process and just how you notify people that the funding window's opened and all that fun stuff? Thanks.
Yeah, good question again. So we do a couple of efforts. We post in the Herald. All of our public meetings, of course, are recorded online. All of that's available as well. We put out to a listserv, so we have interested parties sign up for us with our community development news flash. So we circulate information that way. We attend various funding and other agency meetings, and so usually we try and announce that if we're able to attend all those community meetings as well, some with Snohomish County, some with other agencies. And then we also, of course, post everything that we can online. We also have asked our CAC members to help be advocates in the community and really helping us to identify if there are anybody that we are missing that would need to apply. We try and connect them through that means as well, but good question.
Thank you. Do you know if there's a way, it sparked my curiosity, to glean information from the Secretary of State's office for charities that are located in Everett that could be incorporated into a mailing list of some sort.
I do not know that off the top of my head. Jennifer's nodding her head.
They
But
should
the-
have a business license and be in our business license database if they're doing things
Yeah,
properly.
whether from the state level, can't think of it off the top of my head. From local level, that would be one effort, is to go through the Everett business license process and use that as a tool. Absolutely.
Great. Thanks.
Vice President Tui.
Yeah, just a note on the previous cultural arts programs that they supported. We had one with the Denny Juvenile Justice kids that were there and provided arts classes on a weekly basis, and that, so that was one program that was there. But my question was, how much state and federal funds do we typically give out during a year?
Question. That presentation's later, but I'll see if I can
Okay.
come up with some quick math off the top of my head. So between what our annual allocation is from HUD, our set aside from Snohomish County through an interlocal agreement, and program income that we receive through loans that are paid off, we put out, I would say, close to $1.7 million in federal funding.
Wow.
For this. Some of that's capped. It depends on the type of fund or what program it's under, of how it gets used. And then state funding, when we have our interlocal agreement with Snohomish County, the 2060 Affordable Housing Trust Fund dollars actually come off of recording fees through Snohomish County. And right now, that's about $130,000 to $140,000.
So we give out well over 2 million then.
Oh, yeah, combined
That's
total for
great.
all this.
That's
yes.
great. Super, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. If that's all, Kimbra, we're going to see you back on the 13th. Is that correct? Okay. That is great. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our agenda. We'll now move into our executive session, which is expected to last 10 minutes with council action to follow. The council is back from its executive session, and I will call on City Attorney Hall to advise us on our action.
Thank you. Council President, we're hoping you will ask for a motion authorizing the mayor to execute a settlement agreement with Kim Huntley, the beneficiary of former employee Roger Huntley, now deceased, workers' comp claim in the amount of $200,000.
Do I hear a motion?
I move that motion.
Second the motion?
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Vogely? Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes, and with no further business, we are adjourned.